Good afternoon, everyone. We have quite a full house today, so thank you very much. And still a happy new year for a belated one for the Western tradition, but also for the coming New Year, Chinese New Year, which is in 10 days, which is the year of the tiger. We started this digital food a year ago, exactly this time, January, at the beginning of the stage of the pandemic. So now it's been quite a nice journey. And I think for us in Europe, at least, around the world, we start to see light in the tunnel for the current situation. And so with our digital food session, with our team, we started to look at this topic of connectivity, to connect people, ideas, connect regions, and connect data with strategy. And it's great that we are seeing that as we progress on the topics, that we are moving towards to convert this bottom-up connectivity to consortia building, to shaping our future world. So a quick introduction. My name is Tiffany Tsui. I'm your moderator. I'm a global strategist, consultant, and entrepreneur. And on the digital food team, we have Bianca and Dick Veerman. So Bianca is waving. She will be helping with the poll questions. Our topic today is the goodness paradox. So this is a session, actually close follow-up with our last session, end of December last year, where we had two major standard setters, GS1 and Global Gap, to talk about the willingness and the need for industry players and standard setters, consumers, to work together on harmonizing standards. So today we'll together with our speaker, Hans de Heer, we'll go into some of the really detailed questions. What does it mean in terms of harmonizing standards? So we'll center a topic about goodness. So what is goodness? Let's start with some brain activities for everybody. So let's start with the poll questions. There are 3 questions. Yes, there are 3 questions. No other choice. You have to choose one. So first question is, what is more sustainable? Is it if you are, again, in Holland, from Netherlands, the caged ground chicken, which you call plofkip, or free-range chicken? In here in the Netherlands, have the Better Life 1 to 3 star. And the second question is, what is, again, if you are in the Netherlands, what is organic tomatoes imported from Spain, or local ground tomato from greenhouses here with heating and artificial lighting? So it's certainly with winter. And the third question is whether biomass energy or nuclear energy. So in this question, when you are deciding, the word sustainable is what you broadly defined. So please don't give too much thinking, just what you perceive in your sphere of life and then professional activities. What do you perceive to be most relevant to you? So if everybody are finished, we can see the poll question, the result. Okay, very interesting. We have more or less similar. So the chicken question, that's interesting. Actually, 60% of people consider caged ground chicken more sustainable than free-range chicken. That's interesting for supermarkets to hear. Second question is also interesting, that we have a lot of today participants from the horticulture sector. So this is certainly a question important to many players, that local ground tomatoes, even though higher energy intensity, is still more sustainable than organic imported product. And the last one, that's interesting, very interesting, that actually most people agree that nuclear energy is more sustainable. This community here, this is not meant to start a debate on this question, But for example, on the last question, if you paid attention to the EU taxonomy, which is recently released, both biomass energy and nuclear energy are classified by the EU as sustainable. So this draft is still being passed. There are a lot of debates, but it is important to why we discuss about classifications is because when there are standards and labels that attach at a very high level, it will start shaping a lot of policy and impacting our daily life. So with this very nice express opinion, I would like to introduce our speaker, main speaker today, Hans de Heer. Hans is a technologist. It's right? And Hans is very much involved with shaping data flows and harmonization in the agri-food sector. And he believes that there are smart ways that we can go about harmonizing the different data streams and standards. But very first to start is to find out what is exactly sustainable or goodness for all of us. So Hans, please.
Yes, thank you, Tiffany, for the introduction. Good afternoon for most of you, and maybe good morning for some of you. Today, yes, like Tiffany said, I want to do an introduction on what we call the complexity of doing good, and especially the data related to that. Like Tiffany said, I'm a technologist, so every now and then it will become a bit maybe technical. We try to present that, but it's really linked to the real world situation where we're in. A bit of myself, I have a software company, SyncForce, for 22 years. We work for packaged goods manufacturers, and we are highly involved in exchanging data, both coming in from raw material side, going out to retail and consumers, and internally for running your business. Besides that software platform, which we are selling to international companies, I'm also involved in the Consumer Goods Forum. I'm in the steer of the end-to-end value chain committee, where we are looking with quite some big retailers and manufacturers to smarter ways and most likely easier ways to exchange data across the entire value network. So that's why I'm into this topic. And today, I'm going to start with maybe something which is sort of explanatory for where we are today. My daughter received this thing via the mail this weekend, and it was a high gloss card from a beauty brand. And inside it says that they have a new environmental conscious care line, which of course is good news. Everybody gets enthusiastic, but there's no proof. She says, yeah, what are they doing? Nothing is there. And they printed it on laminated paper, which is close to impossible to recycle. So it was a confusing message. And this is, I think, where we are. Everybody is working, most likely driven by positive intentions, to improve their sustainability profile, health profile, social responsibilities, all these big topics. But how do we sort of communicate that, deal with that in the real world, making it clear in an honest and trustworthy way to consumers? So today, I'm just going to do an introduction into sort of what I think is relevant in this world of data/information related to doing good, because I think it will become one of the biggest topics for most companies and NGOs and other organizations in the coming years. Now, like I said, I'm working in the world of data. We handle loads of data for millions of products. And data explosion, of course, is a big trend already for many years. This is from a research we did with the Consumer Goods Forum, and we have the connected retailer, we have the connected consumer, the connected customer, whatever you want to call it. They need more data, more transparency, and that data is coming from everywhere, pesticides all the way from the farm to the consumer, and that's highly putting a pressure on your or our organizations because it's very complex to handle all that data. And that's even enforced by the digitization trends, both in logistics. We have warehouses where no people are working anymore, but robots run on data. Of course, we have the whole e-commerce trend, which is, of course, maybe the big data driver of the past 10 years. But now, on top of that, we have this, what we call goodness-related data. And that's also the complexity here is that what we call the goodness paradox. because that's the complexity internally and externally with dealing with this data. Everybody wants to say, hey, we need to have a more sustainable portfolio or healthy portfolio, or we must run our company in a socially responsible way. But that's sort of not easy, because first of all, we still need to be there tomorrow. So one way or the other, we need to make money. And that's what we used to. Then in the same moment, we want to save the planet. And while doing that, we also want to do good for our people, for our consumers, for the farmers that work for us, for the animals that we process in our products. And it's not always easy to optimize all three. Now, you already had that in the poll at the beginning of this session. You win some, you lose some. So maybe well-being, animal well-being increases, environmental impact is negative. So we have pluses and minuses, and that's where the complexity comes in. And we need to sort of start explaining that internally, but also to the retailers, consumers, business, and other business partners. Now, just some paradox examples. We started with the poll, which was sort of the same intent. So let's say that part of your strategy is that let's reduce food waste. That's where we are going to focus on. So then R&D said, okay, we're just going to wrap everything in plastic, put it under protective atmosphere. Shelf life is expanded with an average of 7 days. It's really a big success. And then a new CEO comes in, he says, we have a new strategy. We want to be plastic free by 2050. And then all of a sudden, you are sort of in your conflict zone. And that's where the paradox will hit you. Second example, animal well-being. And that's the chicken example. We say, okay, we have lots of chickens on a very small place. That's not good. We need to give them a better life. And with doing that, that's what we call that 1, 2, 3-star chicken. We're going to extend the lifespan of the chicken. So they live 20 to 35 days longer. But when they live longer, to put it nicely, they also shit longer. So that means we have 2 times higher ammonia per chicken breast. And that demolishes our nature. So we have a second program running at the same time, Natura 2000, which says, we need to protect our nature. And that means they have a new strategy, get rid of chicken farms. So we actually are selling out farmers to close their farms. And then, we still need chicken breast because the consumption is not changing. So let's move the production to Asia, like they don't have forests in Asia. And that's against our strategy that we say we want to start local sourcing, less transport, because we want to be carbon neutral by 2020, by 2050, the famous 2050. So we have now all of a sudden chicken breast flying in with an airplane. So here also we have a plus and a minus, or maybe the multiple plus minuses on one question. Now, besides that, we get more and more also what we call ethical conflicts in that goodness paradox. And that's related to, let's say, in this case, pharmaceuticals. We say, okay, we're going to increase life expectancy. That's where we refer. So live longer, then we need more and better drugs. And that's exponential because if we move our average life expectancy from 60 to 70, then from 70 to 80, from 80 to 90, most likely the total consumption of medicine will simply increase. That means we have more residues in drinking water, which is becoming a very serious problem. And that means we live shorter. So while trying to extend our lives, we actually are in the end shortening our lives. And that's also a huge challenge. How do we deal with that? So should maybe not the pharmaceutical industry also always focus on an additional goodness indicator, which we call clean water, that we say, okay, how are we going to solve this residue issue with the new medicines which we will bring to market? So that's sort of the first part on that. And then last but not least, less salt or more salt is also always a nice one. This is actually an example from the markets we serve. Everybody says, let's reduce salt levels because that's healthier in itself. Yes, great. The downside is that salt also has a function. So without all that salt, bacteria really like your product. Then it becomes dangerous. People even died. And then we say, let's put in a bit more salt, but in the end, that's healthier. So is less salt healthier or more salt healthier? Depends on the context. And the same, of course, goes for food waste. If you just wrap everything in plastic, put it full with sugar and salt, it will last forever. We even learned that hundreds of years ago. with creating dried salted fish and that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's still something we need to look into, and how are we going to deal with that? So what we see now in our customer group is, this is one example, is that they say for all the brands we have, they run multiple brands, this is one of the brands, they pick one goodness domain and say, here is where we want to excel. This is where we want to focus. So this is about dishwashing. So they say, okay, we want to do the dishes with the least amount of water to be used for doing the dishes. No more rinsing up front, with less liters of water, all that kind of parameters. That's what they really focus on. And that's what for them is a positive go if there's somebody comes up with a new innovation or new product ID. Now, if you then look at data, because all these things I presented run against data. So we said, is something in a product? What amount? If we do something, will it decrease? Will it increase? And we have these questions all over your organization, but also externally. Retailers say we want to, if the plastic levels on a pallet are too high, we will refuse the pallet. Procurement needs to source fish, which is dolphin friendly. Everybody needs data to make decisions. And what you see on the right is, I think, something which was unthinkable of maybe 5 or 10 years ago, that we have a brand communicating on the front of pack what part of the product is good and why, and what part of the product is not good and why. It's there for preservative or better bacteria reason or stabilizer. Yeah, sorry, it's not a super natural component, but it is what it is. And that's also more information we need to convince retailers and consumers to make the choice for our products based on other things than the traditional buy us because we are great in this, or marketing or branding or whatever was there in the past. So that's a huge new data set which we need. And now we need that. I'll just use the example of our customer community, which has always two sort of pillars. The first pillar is, hey, we want to turn our goodness strategy in a better portfolio. So that's a project management environment, you could say, where we make decisions. We have two ideas. Which one should we continue, left or right? And that's the part we're looking at in the organization. Now, most of our customers, if not all, work in this case traditionally with a business case. And business case are pretty straightforward, financially driven. We have 24 defined indicators, like things like a return on investment, gross margin, what's our volume projections. And then you add up and you deduct the investment, CAPEX and OPEX. And then we say, okay, this is a positive business case. It passes our thresholds for minimum margin or whatever thresholds you have financially. So all the pluses and minuses added up, we make a decision, go or kill. So that's easy. But now we want to extend that in the software, that's sort of where I'm coming from, into what we call the goodness case. And then we're going to add 2 more chapters to this business case. So then we say, okay, on well-being, we win some, or we lose some, or we win and lose some. And then can we sort of compare that? Right? Like that example with Finish. On the water side, we have 3 pluses, but we have 1 minus on something else. That's then great. So it's on good for well-being. And then the last part is good for the planet. And then we can say at the end, we make it a decent decision. If we look at everything, we still should do this. So it can be that maybe your projected revenue growth will be 0, but it will be so positive for well-being or the planet that we're still going to continue this new innovation, new product development, whatever it is that's on the table. And here we need these indicators and we need to be able to compare them. And that's now the difficulty, because there is sort of no set of indicators like in the financial world that everybody understands, and that we say, if this is 4 and this is 3, is it then a positive or negative decision? Now, the second challenge is more on the consumer side. And that's more, how do we harvest the benefits of doing it? I started with the example from Chanel, where they say, hey, we're going to tell the world that we do actually have a new line which is better for the environment, which in itself is great. And everybody, of course, wants to harvest the benefits of doing good. Now, Finnish is simpler. They can just put it on the packaging with the water usage, but sometimes it's not that easy. And if you look at that world, traditionally, again, good for the business, it resulted in features and benefits, which marketing then turned into nice images and nice statements and claims. And then we start selling the project with campaigns and advertising. But on top of that, you see a sort of explosion of claims related to well-being in text or in marks or pictograms, and also the same on the planet side. And there are multiples which sort of cover the same thing. They all are slightly different in wording. And you as a consumer or as a customer, should try to figure out, which one is what does it mean? And is it then against my preference or what I think is important, is then a good choice. So label rouge for French chicken, is that good for animal well-being or not? That's very hard for a lot of people to figure out. And it's also complex in the world of e-commerce. This is an example for clothing, where of course you can filter on type of product and your size and the colors you're looking for. But here we have a durability filter, which says emission reduction. And then some brands pop up. But what does it mean? Is there any level, and how is it measured? And how as a brand do you indicate this? It's very sort of complex and vague. So we are still a bit in the qualitative kind of area, and that's where it becomes also a bit scary, because the trust levels can be easily gone if there's no sort of actual proof of doing this. Now, same on the retail side, food retail, you have all kinds of lifestyle things. Is it halal? Is it keto diet suited? And of course, the allergen kind of stuff, which is more hard, which is easier to do. But here we also have a lot of new filters coming in, where people make choices based on product attributes which are related to doing good. Maybe the strangest one we had over the past months is that people say we don't want to buy products from Brazil anymore because they're against what's happening in Brazil. So can we prove that this orange juice or these grapes or anything they like is definitely not from Brazil? So it can be any dimension in this goodness area, which is personal, important to you. Now, then you see all kinds of manufacturers jumping into this. This is an advertisement where it's not really clear upfront who's sort of organizing this, but this is all Unilever brands, so we assume it's Unilever. It's Dutch, but it says this bottle is up to 100% recycled plastics. Now, I really like the statement. I clearly understand their intent, because they're moving towards 100% recycled plastic. They're not there yet. So, but this means that any bottle, whether it has 0, 1, 10, 50, 70, or 80% recycled plastics, can have this sticker, which in itself is also risky, because then your trust is out the door in no time. What they do is a website, besides that, just like Nivea did on the packaging, with a website where they explain the justification. Why can we not just stop using plastic packaging altogether? So that's sort of something you see all the time. Now, we try to simplify that. So NutriScore, EcoScore, we all know these big new pictograms. In France, they try to cover it everything. I like simplicity. It's sort of the Da Vinci quote, the simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Now, this seems to be the holy grail. We have a number between, I assume, 1 and 100, but the top score is 100. It scores on all the important dimensions, and then you put it on the product, done, you could say. But then, 62, 69, does it say anything at all anymore? So too simple is also not an option. 500 logos on a pack is also not an option. Logos from different organizations trying to tell you the same message in a different way is also not the option. So this is a really sort of complex topic to cover, which I think we, not even as an industry, but as a global community, should at least try to solve. The same as the financial did. EBITDA, everybody knows what it means. And then the financial people, okay, if that has this score, then at least it gives you some direction instead of what I call sort of marketing logos to start with. So this is for the first part of the introduction, and then we have a poll.
Thanks, Hans. So indeed, the question, the issue at hand is very complex. I think I agree with you that when you have in the French label system, when you try to put everything to one score, in the end, it's all comes together. Again, it's all the same. So if you look at the EU taxonomy way of judging what is better, the system in the EU taxonomy system is to have projects, activities. They must significantly contribute to one area while not hurting the others. So in this poll question, it's kind of, it's similar to say, can you choose one topic of the 6, which is reference to the French system, that to you is utmost important, while not hurting the other principle and with minimum regard for issues like human well-being or fairness. So pick your choice. So on that topic, Hans, is you see that the development on the big national or EU level or around the world is to develop this high top-down system to classify what is sustainable or not, because currently it is getting more and more confusing. And the danger in that is nobody trusts no information anymore. So what do you see that in our discussions that as industry players, as consumers, how can our activities as industry to align with this top-down approach? What's happening, for example, with the EU taxonomy system?
Yeah, this is of course the mapping theory to practice. Maybe I think that they start there is okay. I still think they might not even cover all domains, but then in a domain we must create something which is the same as we already have for, let's say, net content. That everybody says, okay, we know what it means. There are multiple units, can be in gram, can be in milliliters. So we have the same in this area. There's no one version, but at least that if you, and that's, I think, the most important one, if we start providing data from 3 sources on the same topic, that the receiver can compare the data or the goodness of a product. And that's where we need to bring it one level lower into sort of what I call, more like a taxonomy information model, which is really, really precise. So that we say this means this, and this is how you measure it, and this is then for the receiver what it means. And I think that's the step, which is then the next step, if we sort of harmonize at least what do we call what.
Yes. So that's also our session today, is to set a stage for the coming digital food activities to look into actual industry and different sectors and user cases. So today we have also in our participant audience, really great representation from different sectors. So I would encourage you to later on, we open a floor to come with your feedbacks to in how do we move forward in this employing this bottom-up activities, because it is important that industries work together and not leaving only up to governments to deliver, let's say, the top-down classification of systems. And then if you have a burning question, please just also raise your hand and we can also address it in between. If not, then we can continue with the second part of Hans' presentation on what do we do on this confusing situation.
No, you present the results at the end, Tiffany?
Oh yeah, now we can show the result, of course. Bianca, please. What is the... okay. So there's an overwhelming...
Yeah.
That would also mean that labels do not have to try to make all 6 the same, but have one most important, where have minimum or let's say selective criteria. That could be one way to just really focusing on one. That could be, that's interesting result.
Yeah, definitely interesting.
Yeah, please continue.
I already answered in the question from Tiffany. I think we need a common taxonomy to at least to start communicating and proving doing good. Some are there, but I think most are vague. And we have to do this in a holistic way. And this is maybe the hardest part of the whole puzzle. We must create a taxonomy that works for all geographies. So do not start with the European system, because we source clothing and stuff in Asia, and Asia sources in Europe, so that won't work. We have to create it for all industries. I do a lot of session in the consumer goods forum, where we always try to solve issues for crisp and soft drinks and dairy products, because they're the big players are represented. But we also sometimes have Andreas. He might even be in the call from the fashion industry. He's always fun as he's there, because he always has different problems which were not solved if we solve something. So having all the industries present is essential. And then last but not least, it should cover at the beginning from farming, pesticides start at farming, and then all the way up to recycling, so that at least if we data is usually starting small and then expanded once it moves through the value chain, we can do that connectivity. So that means if then somebody is doing recycling of bottles and plastic packaging for food and beverages in Asia, they only pick what's needed for them, and that's it. So that's sort of the complexity of this topic, because there are tonloads of initiatives. I've seen many, but none of them sort of talk to each other. At least not all are talking to everybody. And we have a question. Tiffany, do you watch the chat?
Yes, I'm watching. We'll answer the questions later when discussion.
Now, first thing, and this is not correct, neither it's complete, neither it's checked with anybody, but it's just a first ID, because I didn't want to provide a framework at the beginning. But we said, hey, if you look for good for planet and good for well-being, what are then the key topics we try to address, and what are then sort of the buttons that we can push? So where can we interfere that it will affect anything? We can reduce pesticides, we can stop using antibiotics, of course the water usage in total. Carbon and energy is highly related, and these are all the big themes which we're looking at. But for this example, just as an exercise sort of idea of what we need to do, we need to do them one by one. So do not create one supermodel, because it never will work. We're just going to focus on one topic. And today I'll just give you my idea without any group sessions on recycling, but it's only to sort of the line of thinking and how complex even something really simple, it seems like recycling might be. Now, recycling, the first thing is we put something on a packaging. I've sort of neutralized the logo a bit. It says something on recycling and it says 13%. And then the first question is, what do we mean? Is this clear for everybody? And then does it mean that this is 13% based on recycled materials? That might be. And then, but we have different types of products. So is this about the packaging or the product? We saw a dairy product which says 30% more sustainable on back, and it was actually referring to the carton in which the dairy product was. It didn't say anything on the dairy product, the yogurt, which was in there. So it has to be clear it's about the packaging, because we want to reach 100%, that's fine, but for consumables, that's impossible, because I assume that the crisp part will never ever be made from anything that is recycled material. So we say, okay, we have recycled materials packaging, and we have recycled materials product, because in this case of Brabantia, the plastic lid is recycled plastic, and this one is a recycled carton. So we have two numbers. We have one for the packaging and one for the product. Disposables is maybe the most complex area of all. I've not figured out how to solve that, because that's in between a consumable and a durable. But we also have to make that sure. It can also say, no, it indicates the part of the product that actually can be recycled. So if you look at Brabantia, they are sort of a cradle-to-cradle company. They even have this parameter to say, okay, we create as much products from as much recycled materials as possible, and we make it in such a way that it can be almost 100% be recycled. But when recycling, we also measure the degrade percentage. So how much virgin sort of material, of usable material, do we get out of our product? So that's another parameter. And in exchanging data, we have to be clear which one are we talking about. So let's continue then only with one. Let's say, okay, we're going to look at the percentage recycled materials used in the package. Now, then we say, okay, we have here this indicator where it says, okay, this product has a certain amount of recycled materials in it. And now comes in the value chain complexity, because this is the brand owner, which has maybe their own manufacturing or a contractor, which created that shower gel. And then we have data coming in from suppliers, bottle supplier and printers in this case. And of course, things which go in the formula, which we need in the manufacturing. And we want to exchange that data from the farm until fork, or maybe I always say from farm to recycling. And in this case, it's from the chemical production, it's plastics. So is that then possible? And then we need to look into two things. One is the indicator, and the other one is what we call data points. So here we say the indicator was percentage recycled materials used in packaging. Now, these are three packaging components, each have that parameter. But with this, I cannot calculate my percentage here, because I would say 90 plus 10 plus is 120, divided by 3 is 40%. That's wrong, because this product does not contain 40% recycled materials. So for exchanging data, that indicator field is incorrect. Now I'll make it sort of really technical. So in the database world, where computers are exchanging data across from China to Europe and back, we need hard-defined fields. So here I say we need to have the total packaging weight and the recycled part, either in grams or percentages, both is fine, but we need at least the total weight in grams. Then we can add up the grams, and we can calculate the sum of the recycled materials. And that means with these parameters, because this is so lightweight, my total recycled materials used in gram is based on this 13%. So the first decision as a group, this group, let's say, we need to make is how do we measure that? Because you can also say, I measure it in number of components. So not in grams, but in items, because this is easy, maybe for packaging. But let's look at the product from Babansia, a bin, which has all kinds of components. How do you then calculate the total based on the sum of the components, let alone that you have a TV or a laptop? So we say grams is maybe the only way to do it. And then we have to align on that, and then everybody starts exchanging data, at least in this standard. Now, we now talk about, that's a nice goal, that 80% of our product or our packaging can be recycled. But the real challenge, of course, is that we actually start recycling. So is not the real parameter actual percentage recycled? This is an example of clothing. This is a new clothing item. And there is a huge pile of clothing from the fast fashion lying in Chile. And theoretically, maybe they communicate, that's all perfectly recyclable, but nobody, even new products are not recycled. So here we need maybe a new indicator and a new data points that we say, can we have any information about what's actually recycled from these products? How should they be recycled with recycling standards? There's also organizations working on that. Can we make this easier for consumers, that we standardize the way you recycle? And then can we have data on that? Because then we can say, hey, this brand is actually doing really good because 40% of their products is actually recycled. I think that's the holy grail of recycling data. So that's another one. And then on top of that, we have targets either by communities, industries, governments. Sometimes they're even legally allowed, where there's somebody says, by that year, you have to reach this level. So we should also bring targets into that model of recycling, that we can compare our parameters and indicators with the targets of different industries or different governments. This is a German target, so I have to compare my numbers with the German target. And this is a cradle-to-cradle certification. I also have to compare my numbers with their threshold levels. And here it becomes weird because they say material reutilization. So that's a new term. Is that the same or different, or is it possible that they use the same term that we already maybe defined in the steps before, because now it becomes really confusing. Or is this really something different? And should we bring it into the model? And that depends on you if you want to use it. So this is sort of all the things we need to do only to exchange data on recycling. And then last but not least, this is this famous warehouse of unsold fast fashion products in Chile, where we say, yeah, but people just dump or scrap products. We produce new products and dump them, which I think is maybe even worse than using them and not recycling them. And should we also have that indicator that we can assign that to a brand or to a legal entity, a company, to do so? And then we have maybe your fifth or your sixth parameter in this recycling exercise. Now, this is sort of with a group of people who sort of have knowledge of a certain domain. Can we come up with this model of data points and calculations, indicators, and stuff and targets? Now, then you think, okay, did we now solve the puzzle? No, because there's one dimension which adds a bit of complexity to the whole thing, and that's value chain impact, life cycle impact, cradle to cradle, whatever you want to call it. And this one, this is a car, and it says 0 emission, which is a cool claim. I like it. Everybody should buy this car. But what does it really mean? I think they mean the moment you see it driving, there is 0 emission. But if you charged it with a coal-based electricity last night, I don't think you have life cycle proof of 0 emission. And in the production, did they compensate for the emission? Nobody knows. And this is also something which we need to address. So that's the second component of what we think is needed across industries. The first thing is defining clear indicators and clear data points and clear calculations. And the second one is that if we claim something, that is also clear. What does it cover of the entire life cycle or of the entire value chain? So this is an example where a company says we want to have 50% less carbon emission for own operations. So at least they say, okay, this own operations. It does not cover the entire value chain. One of our customers says we want to be carbon neutral across our entire value network. So that starts at growing crops and it ends with storing products in a cooled environment in food service environment. So even the fridges in restaurants are taking into account in their calculations. So if we exchange data, we must be certain, okay, this number, where does it apply to? And that's even also a very, very complex topic. I have here the example of private label in fashion, which we are a lot in private label, but I'm also involved in fashion. In private label, retail private label, they don't own any factories. Nobody creates somebody else creates their cookies. And do we then take that into account with own operations or not? Fashion brands, there are many fashion brands who don't create any clothing at all. They only source that with contractors. So their own carbon footprint is maybe pretty low. But if you include all the production facilities which they don't own, it's not. So own is also a bit vague, maybe too vague to exchange data to be able to compare. Now here another example, carbon complexity. We say we have beef, and then okay, that's the top one. But of course, the last part, transport, is very small. But in the end, we say what are we comparing with what? And then we say this is data based on, and then we have locations coming in and transport coming in. And do we really know what we mean? So what is this data covering and based on what? So at least I can compare this one. This product is better than that product. That's of course what the ultimate goal is. So besides having clear indicators, clear data points, clear calculations, we should also have reliable entities to connect this data to. So this is about a raw material. This is about a farm. This is about a production location. It's about this company. It owns 3 farms. So what data point is linked to what? And below that, that's maybe easier. And we need to pick up some base standards. Like I said, unit of measure, we work with grams and kilograms. And we work with industry lists like the FAO fish catch areas and maybe some standards from GS1, and there are many more. which we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that we say, okay, we can pinpoint this to a certain part of the world or a certain part of the value chain or whatever we want to link it to. That's also essential. This is one example. We did a project within the Consumer Goods Forum on data ports. We want a machine-to-machine autonomous data exchange. So machines could ask other machines for data. And then we have a question on, from that website, is this brand good for the environment or any other of the parameters? And then we found out, brand name is not unique enough, so computers cannot provide the answer. So we need identifiers for brands, like we need identifiers for locations, where we have GLNs and true codes. And there's all kinds of initiatives which are there. So that's, I think, a topic for even a future session. The importance of identifiers, trustworthy identifiers, in a global data exchange. Is this really presenting something on a global scale? Because otherwise, this data exchange will be a nightmare. Combining multiple sources into one conclusion is this is essential. So for today, that was just an introduction on what should we maybe want to solve as a community, and who's willing to participate. I think we need a lot, and that we split it up in domains. That's why I said let's start with recycling, who should be involved there, and then solve it as a part. But we of course have a lot of knowledge already there, especially also in NGOs or people who already create overviews, companies performing on a certain dimension. We have companies that look on data standards, like ATIM in installation and building and construction, Global Textile Scheme in fashion, GS1, Global Gap, of course, in food retail and the whole food industry. And on the right, there's just a very tiny example of companies that build software. GS1 has the GDSN network, SAP has PLM systems. In SyncForce, my company, we have to exchange product data, that we adapt that standard, like we all have the ISO country list adapted in all our software solutions. And I think we should move into this as a second step. It's not easy. And we've learned that the hard way already with projects which I've been involved in over the years. Keeping it agnostic is essential. It should not be part of a platform, so integrated in any of the platforms, whether it's a non-for-profit or NGO, or it's not even important. It should not be in any of these organizations. It should not be part of a data standard, so the data pool or a file exchange standard or whatever we have already there. And it should not, any other implementation. So it should be really independent, like the ISO country list. It's only a Wikipedia page with a list of codes. No power concentration, because if we have one single non-for-profit organization, in the end, they will commercialize it, whether they call it non-for-profit or not, and get all the power, and then others will not join. So that's a big thing, I think. And that we accept and expect also multiple standards. There will never be one standard. We cannot even come up with the standards for countries, you could say, because there are 3 ISO standards for countries. So even that's complex. So let's just assume that it's fine if there are multiple, as long as they're interoperable. That's of course the key word. Then we're fine. So that's my considerations. And then for the rest, it will be a very complex and very long journey, I think. But if we don't do it, I think the trust levels will be, consumers and customers will be really threatened if we continue the path of, let's say, the more marketing kind of everybody invents their own pictogram approach.
Thanks, Hans. The discussion, it's as I mentioned already earlier, it will tend to be a bit more on technology, but it's also important if we are to move forward to reaching concrete environmental target, like meeting the 1.5 degrees or reducing 50% of fertilizer. These are all concrete numbers. Then as industry with consumers, we need to be able to communicate in clear, universally understandable, comparable indicators, which is hard. But already now about our previous post, you see a direction that, for example, carbon intensity measured across life cycle, it's emerging to be one of the clear indicator, because that's also in the EU taxonomy in reducing actual unit of CO2 emission. But there are disadvantages of singling into one standard. So this poll question is meant to open the floor for debate. And there's a number of questions, example, what are the debate issues? For example, should we just get rid of all those confusing voluntary standards, whether it's fair trade or is it the organic or planet proof? Just replace one label from, for example, the EU sustainability label that across all sector. Or is it the issue right now? One comment already said there is maybe no desire to have one clearly definable standard, because currently the confusing situation in the marketplace also can be advantageous for brands, because since nobody knows, then everybody can claim whatever, and consumer just have to pick and choose. But eventually, that has a danger of, in the end, nobody trusts anything. But another big incentive to have clear, definable target is because there are a lot of government spending and consumer spending requiring clear reporting, so disclosure information that also give a lot of incentive for industry to work together. So the question is I wanted to open a floor for our different sector players. What do you see the biggest challenge, but also can be beyond that? What would be the next step to solve some of this situation from your domain, your sectors? How do you see that we can connect the knowledge on technology with standard setters, with supply chain players, and then also align with the bigger governmental standardization or standard development movement? So actually, currently the floor is open, so I would welcome for comments. If nobody volunteer, I will call on.
So I will volunteer.
Okay.
My name is Koen Bonen.
Please introduce yourself also.
Yes, I was already trying to do that. So my name is Koen Bonen. I work for Wageningen University and research. And I would not choose one of the 4 ones that are presented. In my opinion, the challenge is to measure more goal-based or output-based type of indicators that are more easily harmonized and are also closer to what you really would like to measure. And that could be also a first step into harmonization.
So metrics and on the common base that taxonomy, thinking of having a scientifically based understanding of what are we measuring, the goals, clear goals.
Yeah, for example, you should measure greenhouse gas emission instead of if somebody is using alternative energy or those type of more measure-based or process-based type of information, because that type of information is always interpretable, can be different interpreted. And if you assemble more goal-based indicators, I call them, greenhouse gas emissions, example, with water use, so basic information that can be interpreted in a different way afterwards if needed. That will help harmonize, I think, and also exchange information in a more reliable and objective way, both for business-to-business communication and finally also for business-to-consumer communication.
Do you think the issue is that there's a lack of such scientific knowledge to develop this kind of goal-based metrics?
Partly. So sustainability is quite new. The comparison was made with financial information. And we have already financial information for probably 150 years. And still there's a lot of debate, what is a profit? And so it's not that it's always clear what is a profit, because there's also enormous debate still how to interpret profits. There are companies that are making a loss for 10 years and still everybody's investing in it and they have a huge value, because there are still some issues also with profit calculation. With sustainability, it's quite new, maybe 20, 30 years. So still in a lot of cases, there needs to be more natural science, you could say, or social science to really understand the subject and to make a good definition. So I don't expect that in the coming 10 years, the harmonization issue will be completely solved, because we still have to learn a lot how things work and what is really important around sustainability. So that's one part. The other part is that a lot of companies have an interest in being vague and especially in the marketing domain, it's nice to claim a lot without giving real content. So that's another thing, I think. And then the third one is that we need to agree about definitions and what Hans is also saying. For those sustainability themes where science is far enough, and a lot of standards are already available around life cycle assessments, for example, where terms are defined very narrowly and very precise. And it's just that everybody should use the terms that are already there.
Yeah. You also always should use whatever is there, but still there's, even in one area, if we can try at least use one word for the same, that we maybe even calculate in a different way, but at least we know what do we mean with what, because like somebody also said in the comments, it is of course now also partly in the hand of marketing and branding, which try to come up with a new word, of course, because then they can claim we are the only one. Planet Proof is created by one company, and they say our products are planet proof, and we have many of these examples, but front runners had the advantage, but now everybody comes to the party and we end up with 100,000 different logos, meaning in the end, I think nothing. That's my, and also on your output, yes, I agree, everything we can measurable output is nice, but animal well-being is very complex to do that, because you can say the number of square meters, but then you have 10 parameters, and then they combine that into sort of a well-being, which nobody has a clue, because you cannot ask a chicken, do you actually have now well-being score 7 or 8, and what does it mean? So it's, yes, it applies to quite a few, especially in emission in the energy area, but it doesn't apply to all the domains. Sometimes you have to do it more like a qualitative approach than a quantitative approach.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. So it really depends on the theme. Yeah. How far you can go. Like it also depends on the theme, how far science is. Yeah. But yeah, we have to also realize that even with greenhouse gas emissions, there's still a lot to learn. When you talk about carbon sequestration, for example, there's still a lot of discussion how to develop a standard and how to calculate all those kind of things, although some of the other parts of greenhouse gas emission are already clear. And a lot of people are working on standards, but it's new and it's complicated, and we don't have the science to set the standards yet. Yeah. And they will keep developing also in the coming 10 years.
Yeah, thanks, Koen. I think that's a feel, let's say, from the scientific community. Let's hear also other comments, or also call on. First, I'd like to actually invite Mariska Dressler. Mariska, and then follow with the other participant. Mariska is director for Green Tech at Horticulture. So earlier we had another session discussion about relevant to the horticulture sector, especially relating to the poll question number 2, that has the EU level decisions a lot of impact on the horticulture world. And as a leading voice in the horticulture sector, what do you think are the necessary changes? So bring this discussion, the horticulture, into the bigger agri-food, sustainable food system discussion.
Well, I think it's very well. First of all, I'm not a standardization specialist. I'm more, from my point of view, the connector of different stakeholders in horticulture, especially focused on technologies. And we do that with our Green Tech Amsterdam exhibition and with the Green Tech Americas. So more regional focus, and next to that, we have our online community. But I think first of all, it's important to, well, everybody wants, of course, to have a better world and to have this standardization. But it is, as said, very complex. So for me, it's first to create the awareness and to create the interest to speak with each other about it, and especially in horticulture. Also, like from Wageningen University was said, it is still very complex. So let's just talk about it and share all the different views. And I'm convinced that everybody is stepping into this with a wish to make it better. Everybody wants to have a better world. So that's something that really puts us together. So let's sit around the table, create as much as gatherings like this. I'm very willing to help in that with green tech horticulture, but we can also think about crossovers. I'm just looking for myself, who I represent. I work at RAI Amsterdam, so horticulture is just one part, but we have very big access to other great communities like automotive, like let's say water technology, even the super yachts industry. Why not think about, first start with green tech, but why not think about gathering the OEMs and talk with them about what can we do? Because everybody is looking for that holy grail. But we have to start and just create that awareness, interest, and the desire to really have to really look for solutions. And so I don't have an answer. I only have a platform to do that, a willingness to do that, and I think we also should look at what is there already. Instead of inventing the wheel again. But it's a very complex situation.
Thanks, Mariska. So that's actually more or less that's the last choice of the poll questionnaire. First, exactly what is it? What's the problem? Defining the question first, and also understanding this the three-dimensional box Hans had, that different sectors, different domains. Where are the crossover? What is the common ground across different sectors? Is it from processing industries, packaging, horticulture, or if you're a producer from Africa? What is the common issue that is a framework that we can discuss? So also I'd like to kind of pre-announce that the Digital Food is discussing with Mariska to have a joint session during Green Tech in June about the horticulture user case in how to address this issue. So in the coming month, we'll develop further to define the question first. Next, I would like to invite Andreas, as your hand up already. So please introduce yourself and then your comment.
My name is Andreas Schneider. I'm from Düsseldorf. I'm a friend of Hans, who helped me very much when we started our fashion initiative, or textile value chain initiative. We are both members of the Consumer Goods Forum end-to-end value chain circle. I agree with the previous comments. There's not the Holy Grail, and it's, I think, not the one answer. What we see in the fashion sector at the moment, and I answered the question with there's more literacy necessary, so people don't know enough about the topic. As you can tell, I'm out of puberty, so in my age group, far above 50 in the textile sector, the interest in sustainability has significantly driven, which is a good news. So I think, so, from the Little Prince, so, with the tools and the men. So I think the vision is there. So a lot is moving. I think it's very tough to compare the food sector with fashion, because you have the Amazons, the Metros, the Walmarts, the Metros, and so on. So you have big animals with Nestle, and so it's much easier to sort of agree on certain things. Fashion, I'm representing the biggest German fashion association, and 65% of our members make less than 10 million euros revenue. I have in 25 minutes a work group meeting where we will discuss with my initiative members for collaboration and sustainability. We renamed the work group this year from collaborative planning and forecasting, which was very hands-on, to this topic. And the core sort of element of the meeting will be to synchronize terms. This is going the direction that Hans already pointed out. We're developing a catalog of standardized data terminologies for the fashion sector. And we have one group, value list, we call that, with sustainability features. And we have recycled we have recyclable, we have bio, we have vegan, we have, so we have terms where practically not with one, the meaning is clear. And what I will discuss with my members is if we do this with GS1 or if we do it by ourselves, is that we work on definitions of the terms, because if we don't speak the same language, we cannot communicate. And it sounds very harmless, it's not. In fashion, 15 years ago, we had what we call vertical partnerships between retailers and brands. And this thing really took off after the terminology who owns the merchandise, who manages the merchandise, who is what logistical variants we had, and what were the payment terms. Like they were sort of defined and put in a morphologic box. The idea we'll discuss with my members this afternoon is to do the same thing with sustainability terms in order to create some kind of structure that we can work into. And I learned, and then I'm finished, that the business model, Hans, you will agree, determine the processes, and then comes technology and not vice versa. And whenever I left that track in my life, I was lost. So this is what we will do, and we will try to synchronize the terms, and we will synchronize the vocabulary around that. Thank you.
It's the first definition. That's also why we mentioned the word of taxonomy. Before we talk about technology, data transfer, and first we need to agree on terms. But this term, the challenge is it need to be cross-sector and international for it to be meaningful. Otherwise, we'll always end up with confusion. But certainly, we do not need to reinvent wheel everywhere. So it is important indeed as a community, as we're talking about this community of interoperability practitioners. The goal is not to develop or invent a new standard, but rather to discuss, exchange knowledge on what is already there, and then to translate terms so we can understand across whether you are from fashion or from tomato grower or is producing processed food. But one issue that Andreas mentioned, that in fashion industry, we have a few leading players. I'm not sure that is also not true for agri-food, because in the agri-food sector, we have the big retails. I mean, in the Netherlands, you have 4 big chains. That's the Albert Heijn's, the Jumbo of Lidl. They are the ultimate end, whether as long as you are in the agri-food sector, food products, you always end up with one of them, of course, the new players. So what we need to start somewhere with the critical mass of companies to work together. We're not able to solve everything at the same time. Indeed, the question next step is defining this roadmap in defining this structure. So not to look at specific solutions or standards, but what are the really most important fruit or low-hanging fruit that we can harvest, let's say. So I'd like to also invite other comments. We have Chooks Oti and Petra. Also, Petra last time also during our last session with the GS1 and Global Gap, you also gave very good comment. So I'd like to also for you to elaborate. Maybe first, Chooks Oti, if I pronounce your name right.
Oh, yeah, good day, everyone.
You can turn on your video.
Oh, okay, we'll do that. Yeah, good day, everyone. My name is Chooks Oti. I'm an SAP consultant in Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so
nice.
I've really enjoyed the session, a lot of learning points. But then one thing I wanted to stress on is impossible to curb CO2 emission, even when you talk about sequestration or what have you. If you can't track it, if you do not have accurate records of CO2 emission, it's impossible to actually go on ahead to say you want to track or you want to control CO2 emission. In Nigeria, we have a lot of oil and gas energy companies, and one thing that's prevalent is the misrepresentation. We have a lot of talks around black soot and illegal crude oil production and what have you. So these things are not accounted for, and that's because of data decentralization. So I think one of the good forward steps in controlling CO2 emissions, or is actually having some sort of centralized database management. At least we know what's going into production, and then we could be able to quantify at least a mean and a max amount of CO2 to expect. Not when you have decentralized data coming from everywhere and everyone gives you misrepresented values and everyone gets confused at the end of the day. So yeah, very interesting session. A lot I've learned. Then I just want to stress about the collection of data in one, having like one central source of truth for your data. Maybe you're a textile producer and you have a lot of chains around the world. You have a lot of subsidiaries. There should be like a central source of truth, so you actually get facts when you're talking about your CO2 emissions and carbon footprints. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Jukes. I think great to hear the perspective from Africa, but I think you raised a key question in the whole digital food discussion is ownership of data and management. So from a coordination point of view, yes, there's you need to have a central repository or place that at least data can communicate. But to talk about a centralized place for data, and that's precisely where the contest point is, that whether a central organization, if it's SAP or it's Google, that it's trusted by the different players, and whether the value created can be fairly distributed to, let's say, farmers by the very end of it. So that's where they start coming down to technology infrastructure on usage, for example, mentioned earlier, blockchain, is that addressing this issue of where is data ownership data finally. That's a question also raised by Gerrit in our chat session. I would like to, if Gerrit, if you want to comment on this remark made by Jukes. Gerrit, is still there? Maybe not. If Hans want to comment.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay.
I'm there. Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, you mentioned already the question of the owner of data, and you just hear Jukes joining from Africa, that he thinks it's important to get rid of decentralized data instead to have a central place. So because you did ask the question of who is the owner of the data and how does it benefit the farmers, I'd like to hear your comment. What do you think about this topic? It is a quite contentious topic.
What I mean is that what I have seen a lot of times is that the farmers give all their information from the crops growing and temperature and so on, and then the companies are getting rid of it. And then if they want to use the data, they have to pay for the programs. So I'm really interested in how can the whole supply chain have a transparent information and benefit of the use of data.
Yeah. Do you want to comment?
I added that to the key sort of considerations, fair data, because that was also mentioned in the previous call. I think it's a really cool concept that whatever shape or form we create it, that we say, yeah, it has to be fair. And also on the single source of truth, that of course there are multiple sources of truth, so a single will become a very complex thing. It's always a powerhouse, so nobody wants that. With blockchain and also peer-to-peer communication, Internet of Things, and all these new technologies distributed is maybe the way forward. At least if machines know where to find it, and then we talk the same language, there's no need anymore to create a central powerhouse in the middle, let alone Google have all this goodness data. If you think about all the domains, it's a gigantic data set. And they will be different in different industries. That's also fine. So my concept is always accept multiple standards. I really like the concept of fair data, that in every step we do, is not one having the pain and the other one the gain. So that I think we should also bring into, but in the consumer goods forum, I also created a model where we have layers, because we first need taxonomy and information model. Then at the bottom, we have infrastructure and technology. And in the middle is data formats, which is more the exchange format. And the last part, machines might take over, that you have your way. It just like with translation computers, I talk my language, you talk your language. But at least as the taxonomy is clear, computers can translate from food to fashion and back, and they all have their own terms. without having a central repository where we align with the whole world. But like I said, we cannot even align on the list of countries. I use that all the time. Now we have one country in Asia where there is some discussion. Some say it's a province, others say it's a country. In Morocco, or the south of Morocco, there's a second one. So even on countries we cannot agree, let alone on these complex topics we are talking about today. So it's interoperability, that's key. Fair data, I think, is key. And if we can do it decentralized, it would be my preference. Of course, we still need some central repositories anywhere, whether for tax reasons or but not go into that super approach, because it's so hard, and it always becomes too slow, because there we need so much governance that we have one release per 10 years. Yeah.
Yes, that was a conclusion from last session between GS1 and Global Gap. That the farmers in the end have to find ownership, and also there's no need for organization to exchange all data, but just be able to exchange and agree on the same terms. Yeah. That's the direction of interoperability. Yeah. I'd like to ask if Petra would like to give some comment.
Well, no comments, merely questions, because I was wondering about indeed the governance of all these data. And is there any role for government to govern this kind of data structures? Because there seems to be some sort of parallelity with the GET reforms when they were talking about agricultural subsidies and reforming the subsidies and diminishing the subsidies. And every country had a different form of agricultural subsidies. So they had to discuss in the GET the methodologies to find a common indicator to, in the end, make agreements on reducing the subsidies. And there seem to be similarities with this issue, that you need to discuss methodologies, you need to discuss the type of data you need to discuss, okay, what's the acceptable baseline, what is our target, etc. So I still feel, but I might have missed it, that there is a real need for governance on an international or at least European level. But you can't just leave this to businesses, I think. I mean, they mean well, but there are so many trade-offs, and you've mentioned a few, Hans, in your introduction, which I think was wonderful. But you mentioned a few trade-offs, and we need to also decide on the type of trade-offs we accept as a society or what have you. So it's more questions than a comment.
Yeah.
A great comment, because actually that's the issue. It is you need a bottom-up approach to gather industry knowledge. At the same time, how does it align to the higher level governance issues, transparency on a higher level, on EU level? So that's actually really the complete methodology of developing industry standard or a coordinated consortia effort, for example. That's the issue. Where's the alignment? Where's the interface needed? I see Andreas want to give comment or response.
To add, good idea. The European Commission is having a call out for the digital product pass, which goes the direction Petra just mentioned. I'm part of the consortium and in charge of the textile sector there. And I was a little bit mistaken when I said that we're helping ourselves in the fashion sector at the moment because there was zero. So we're trying to create some kind of Esperanto so that not everybody has to match everybody, because this won't work. But of course, the interoperability is king. And so the EU is looking for a common data set for electronics, for batteries, and for fashion in this case from the consortium I'm in. And there will be a generic part and an industry-specific part in the future. So this is already on the way. The call is finished to the 22nd of February. So we are on the final period to send off the documents. So this is the status. And I agree. Great. This is what I support, because I think the lawmakers have to grab into this. If we wait for the industry to agree, then I will be dead and buried. And there's some flowers growing on myself, so.
We need to go both ways. So the top-down approach must be the big driver for a bottom-up activity. Mariska, you have a comment?
Yes, that's right. Well, it is, as said, a complex situation, and if I look at the EU, and I don't want to say that the EU is not good, but there is a kind of risk that lies on the corner if you take it only top down. And of course, we don't say you should take it only top down. But for example, the organic movement is very strong in the EU. And I think the reason why it's very strong is because it was subsidy driven. And so there was a lot of advocacy regarding that. And I'm not against organic. But on the other hand, you also have the horticulture industry, which is of glass greenhouses and very technology driven. And it does have a certain appeal sometimes to the consumer that it's not sustainable. But I think the reason why, and it's not recognized really as a very sustainable farming by the EU. Why not? In my opinion, it is because it is a very it is an independent sector. So it's very business driven, but on the other hand, also constantly looking for innovations. But it's like a blind spot in the EU. So we also have to be very careful. And I'm not saying organic is not good. I'm not saying glasshouse horticulture is the best, but we should have a level playing field, and it should be transparent, and it shouldn't be a fact that you are depending on a very good lobby, for example. So it is very complicated.
Yeah, but that's why I like the Nivea example. That's what we need, is that we can compare stuff. And that we can make decisions, so that we say, and the question was, what chicken type is most sustainable? There you have your answer. So in that you can say, if we do it like this, then we have these pluses and these minuses. If we do it organic, we have the same list, but then the other way around. But everybody knows, if the whole world starts eating organic tomorrow, our planet will cease to exist within a week. So it's impossible. Maybe we come up with new technology that it made possible, but so, and then we have to tell the honest story. But if you say, we have this, I had an example long time ago when was a person who was in apple juice, and he said, I will never ever drink biological apple juice. I said, but it has very dangerous bacteria in there. No way. But we cannot tell that on the packaging, because the consumers will think that we're lying. We're telling them lies, because they say organic, non-filtered apple juice sounds like a good plan. And he says, I can honestly tell you that it's not. I'm not sure if he had told the truth, but let's assume it's the truth. It's a very complex message to tell. And that's where we are constantly in the paradox. I think that's
that's really the truth. And it will get more extreme. But also the consumer wants to hear these great stories. There's also an article, or maybe I can share it with you later, about the image of the American farmer. So with this beautiful barn, etc. And it seems that those farmers cannot keep their business healthy, because it's just not possible. So this paradox is increasing, and that also has to do with what do we want. And do we really want to face the truth and talk about that? So it is, again, complex, but good to talk about this and create that awareness.
Yeah.
Yes, I think because horticulture, in terms of technology and data, it's leading the agro sector. So when you talk about standardization or having indicators, that horticulture has actually a lot to teach or to pass on to other sectors, but it's also indeed very much in the interest for horticulture sector to come to agreement to say, let's have at least a fair playing field, right? To at least we're comparing apple with apples. Mm-hmm. So Bianca, let's show the poll result. What is the
Just before we discuss that quickly, I saw a comment on, I had the continents and I forgot Africa. It's completely my fault. And so I just combined North and South America into Americas and added Africa. So that was one of the comments, because it's a cube. So I started on one side, and after 5 options, that was the end of my options. So also not all industries are there, maybe, but at least we fixed that.
Thanks. Sure, that's an unintentional mistake. Well, from our poll result, actually quite a number of 30% of audience supports to get rid of different standards. And then also a big majority also thinks that there's a lack of coordination. So with our roundtable discussion, with this kind of bottom-up initiative, I actually do see industry players, when they can talk to each other and understand each other, there is a strong willingness to work together. So we hope that also with the this kind of organic consortia with at least exchange information that will facilitate and then to overcome this challenge in lack of willingness or coordination between players. So Dick, on that, I think we're concluding our session today. Looking forward, how do we develop our future activities and sessions to address the specific issues and willingness actually to move forward on the topic?
I think by talking about it, because we see that it is fruitful to talk about it. I just raised my hand and lowered it because I wanted to comment on Petra's remark. We need indeed a global governance. You can't even do with just a European one because trade is global. So you'll have the global chain. But we've been talking about this time and again. You need to do the roads and piping for a world government, but there is no world government, so it will not happen. So it needs to come from the private sector. The thing I wanted to remark is that every parameter you choose is always dependent. I am trained as a philosopher, so I always make this remark. Every parameter you pick is always based on a political position. And that is what we have to realize. There is no truth. There is a political position, and that is what you need to make explicit. So that is what it is about. I was raised philosopher, so intellectually by French philosophers teaching me there is no truth, but be rational. And rationality means talk about your view and the way your views influence the way you pick your parameters and you define models. And that is what we need to do. And I think either governments would do this. There would be perhaps an opportunity in the European Union, but I don't see it. Look at the way we're dealing with nuclear gas. We're shutting down nuclear plants, having a bigger gas crisis. Things are just unclear, and we need to sort out what we are actually talking about. Well, I think we proved that today, and how to go about it. Indeed, it is about talking about it, and that is what we did here. Andreas has just left. I think bringing in people from various sectors would already help pushing interests to the side and talking about the subject. So I was very happy with Mariska being from RAI, telling, let's bring in yachting, let's bring in, et cetera, into the game, because that would really open up the discussion. We would be able to talk about the fact that every parameter is always political, and that is what we need to talk about. And, well, how to go about it? The answer is, dear audience, to show use cases, because in the use cases, we see how pitiful we're operating, and that indeed rational people can come up with solutions politics could accept. So I think that is the movement we should try to bring about.
Thanks. And so Jolien Zwart van Kessel from Food Valley, in the same place, Wageningen, mentioned, is there a worldwide community that work on this paradox? I think we're probably among the few ones. Probably there's increasing more initiative to work on this. But since it is very big and complex and topic, we just have to start somewhere. That's how we started. We started somewhere, and then we'll also move forward. So for everybody thank you very much for joining today. This is the last one in this series. So we're now preparing the 2022 planning, especially focusing on, as Dick mentioned, user cases. And already one for sure in June in Green Tech. So also promoting others to join in the live audience in Amsterdam. And keep tuned for the future discussions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Tiffany.